Right, so you're at a party fundraiser. You're pressing the flesh, schmoozing those who donate to your party, and you have a Palestinian man stand up and try to tell you about the family he's just lost in Gaza. What would you do? Listen to him? Console him? Sympathise with him for his losses and the circumstances he's lost his family in. Certainly if you have an ounce of empathy in your body. But if you're Angela Rayner, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, some on the left, especially those still clinging to their Labour membership card, still believe he's a lefty, though I question what you hope to achieve there anymore if you are still hanging in there, then your reaction is to say thank you whilst Greater Manchester Police grab this said person by the scruff and bodily throw him out. Most everyone else in attendance just sat there and looked on impassively in silence and the spectacle before them. Does that sum up the typical Labour member and donor these days? Police state antics conducted before their eyes and they just sit there in silence? As for Rayner, if this incident doesn't finally make you realise her socialist credentials are about as strong as Keir Starmer's are, then I'm not sure what will. Right, so Angela Rayner, dead-eyed Ange, was in Stockport on her home turf with Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds at a party fundraiser, there to give speeches, be seen, be heard, in order to raise money that Labour sorely needs, having lost so many members, and the old Blairite dinosaur donors that have returned aren't coughing up quite as much as needed, though they have very definitely been coughing up, having bought themselves Keir Starmer some time ago. But then a protest began, and it started with one chap who has lost his family in Gaza, confronting both Rayner and Reynolds about their failure to call for an end to the genocide. And well, here's the clip that's been doing the rounds of social media. See what you make of it.
Thank you. Thanks, Johnny. And look, Tameside's going to save the world. That's why us three are up here. But
the change in this country it has come when you take a place and asking and demanding for ceasefire. I lost my family in Gaza. Just a second, I want to show you my mom. I lost my family in Gaza. If the ceasefire taking place,
I just say, Angela Rayner, you tell yourself as a feminist. What kind of feminist are you?
I lose my member. I need my mom. That's the only thing I need.
Where's your voice,
Let me finish. I need my mom. Why are you not demanding for the ceasefire?
15,000 women and children dead, Angela Rayner, and you tell yourself as a modern day feminist? I don't think so.
thank you.
Women having to use scraps, tents for sanitary towels. Where's your voice, Angela? Call yourself a feminist?
Thank you.
I really don't think so.
Jonathan Reynolds, you
For
talk about
praising genocide! For
talk about
praising
power.
genocide!
You
You
had a
should be
chance.
ashamed
You
of
voted
yourself,
for this
Angela
bill.
Rayner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Your vice chair
Thank
of Labour
you.
Friends of Israel. Your friendly
Thank
Israeli
you.
president said he was waging,
You've
his
made
country
your
was
point,
waging
thank
a
you.
war against barbaric jihadists who wanted
Thank
to
you,
take
you've
over
made your
Europe.
point,
Jonathan
thank you.
Women dead every day, Angela. 2 women dead every day. 25,000 people dead, Angela, and rising.
Shame!
Where's
Shame!
your voice?
Shame on all of you!
Shame on all of you! Absolute shame!
You say you want
Shame!
you support it.
Funding genocide!
You're funding genocide! 25! You abstained from the vote and get us a peace! Shame on you!
Shame on you all! And get your hands off her as well!
Pushing me, hands off me!
Disgusting.
Hands off me! You're not arrest me! Ow! Your hands off me! Get off me! You're hurting me! You're hurting me! No, don't get off me! No, get off me! Don't hurt me! Get off me! You're wasting my wrist! You're breaking my wrist! I didn't say it! You're breaking my wrist!
Thank you.
I'm not sure whose conduct I'm more disgusted by there, actually. The politicians or those in attendance just watching it all unfold. Watching some real heavy-handedness going on. Not just in the way the Palestinian man was forcibly removed by the scruff by a police officer far bigger than he was, or the way the same officer manhandled a woman out near the end of the clip. How could anyone just sit there and watch that? Nobody moved. Nobody spoke out to help people protesting a position which is already bringing Labour serious amounts of condemnation. But then there's Rayner's response, which I found interesting too, in that she was clearly completely disinterested. All she could do was say thank you and that the people protesting had made their point. Her hand barely left her hip throughout the entire interruption to her planned evening of seeking donations. Totally impassive, cold, unfeeling. It's little wonder that dead-eyed Ange moniker sticks to her so well. Labour, let us not forget, is the party of protest. It was formed through protest, through workers' rights, through trade unionism, through solidarity, and there is absolutely zero sign of any of that left in this modern Labour Party, which is just another Tory party now, wooing donors just like the Blue Team does, instead of being debt-free and free of influence bought by said donations, as we saw under the previous Labour administration, completely funded by ordinary working-class people giving a fiver there or a tenner here, as the Labour Party was meant to be. Instead of calling out the genocide, the party of Starmer and Rayner have refused to back a ceasefire, have backed attacks on the Houthis in Yemen, who are attacking Israeli and Israeli-bound shipping, and have enabled this sickening assault on Gaza to persist, staying in lockstep with the US as they dictate our foreign policy, and clearly that won't change with a change of government to a Starmer-led one, will it? But Angela Rayner, heck, so many people still thought she was better, didn't they? She stuck with Corbyn. She was one of his, wasn't she? But surely by now you can see she never was. She's just like Starmer, in it for themselves. Both rode on Corbyn's coattails, gained position and privilege through that, and looked on as he got proverbially thrown under the bus. What more proof do you need of this? She's not called this the genocide. She's in an elected position where she can hold Starmer accountable without fear of being sacked, but chooses not to. There's an argument by some that she's positioning herself for a tilt at the leadership herself, but given what she's prepared to sit on her hands over to get there, what kind of leader do you honestly think she'd be? She stood there saying thank you impassively, flatly, her voice not even trying to feign interest, I don't think, as a literal police state action unfolded in front of her, tossing out the very people the Labour Party was created to stand by, stand up for, those facing oppression, standing up for the little guy. The Labour Party wasn't already dead to you. It should have died before your eyes in that room. The audience, the faces of those Labour seats the support of today just sat there, doing nothing, as politicians watch on, also doing nothing, as those facing oppression and wanting to get their point across and their stories told get further oppressed. What makes them any different to the Tories here? That is exactly the sort of reaction you expected a Tory to give. The police handling was so over the top, it was, in my opinion, assault. But Rayner is so vocal online, some of you might say, calling out all the manner of Tory awfulness. And to that I would say, look at her in that room as assault is happening before her eyes. People whose families are the victims of genocide are stood before her and watch her as they get forcibly removed. She doesn't bat an eyelid, she couldn't give a stuff, and of course Twitter has had its say on this. Stats for Lefties wrote, pro-peace activists disrupted a lavish Labour fundraiser tonight, calling for a Gaza ceasefire. One Palestinian told attendees that Israel killed his family. He was dragged out by police as Angela Rayner and Labour supporters sat in silence. Jill King wrote, they physically manhandled a man whose family were killed in Gaza out of the room, a party who one would expect to stand in solidarity with the oppressed, a party that one time would have spoken out against injustice. Why bother fundraising? Who are they for now? Edwina Murphy said, Labour will never get my vote whilst Angela Rayner, Lisa Nandy and Keir Starmer are in post. As women, they make me sick. Her condescending thank yous reveals the depravity and arrogance. Shameful women. Feminist my arse to support what Israel are doing to Palestinian women. And Amani T wrote, what hurts the most is how this man who lost his family was tackled instead of embraced. The whole room should have stood for him. What a world. Couldn't agree more with the sentiment of that last tweet. So many of us have nothing but sympathy and empathy for the innocent people of Gaza being slaughtered in the tens of thousands that we see on our social media every single day. Many of them women and children. The majority of them, in fact, have been women and children. But the level of couldn't care less attitudes amongst politicians, and Labour especially, shows how far they've fallen. And in many estimations, Angela Rayner has fallen further than most. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, if Keir Starmer can make up his mind on whether he actually supports Palestinian statehood or not, that might help Labour politicians position themselves. And whilst you might have a point, Starmer has flip-flopped on this at least 3 times now. That doesn't preclude Rayner from having an original thought of her own, though to understand her possible confusion, not to mention ours, as regards Labour's position, you only need realise Starmer moves from one populist position to the next at the drop of a hat because he has zero integrity. But do watch this video here next to see just what a balls up Starmer is making of this issue for his party, all on his lonesome, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.